everyone. Welcome. My name is Karen Rosenthal. I'm a matrimonial attorney at the law firm of Bickel, Rosenthal, and Shanfield. And we have some people trying to get in. I am here to discuss the issues surrounding custody, and we are in the process of writing a book called Cracking the Custody Code. So I would like to highlight for you all pretty much the four major areas of custody that I'm going to try to let you know my thinking after doing this for 32 years. I'm an attorney for the child. I'm often appointed about 20-25% of my practice, other than regular matrimonial cases. And I'm going to explain to you what it means to be an attorney for the child. But the first thing I looked up when I was asked to speak here is, what is MENSA's goals? And what I found was to identify and foster human intelligence for the benefit of humanity. The problem with matrimonial law and custody fights in particular is it is not about intelligence, it is highly emotional. And so the goal is actually to try to make rational decisions when you're in the heat of probably one of the worst times of your life and your children's lives, if you have children, obviously. And so how do I impart to you all, how can you change the dynamics that it is about being humane in this process, especially in my role as attorney for the children or the child, as the case may be. I try to bring humanity and try to have the parents see that it is more important that they put aside their hatred for one another and love their kids more. And it becomes such a blind rage when they're in the middle of these custody fights. It's something to witness, especially as representing the children and the kinds of things that I've heard from the children over these I've been doing the children work about 15, 20 years. So why would an attorney be appointed for children? Let's start with that. Okay, so children get a voice. That is what we feel in our legal system is important, that the judges hear what their voice is. They don't get a vote. That's the difference. So when we're talking about, well, how am I supposed to hear? How's the judge supposed to hear what their voice is? That's when I get appointed. Who pays is a normal question I get asked, and it's the parents, and it depends on their incomes. The judge makes that decision. I have nothing to do with it. But normally the judge will call me up, say, what's your hourly rate, what's your retainer, et cetera. And I try to always bring it down. And also, because I'm the third attorney, if not the fifth, depending on how many people hire. So the role that I have is to meet the children or child. Some attorneys do not meet with the parents. I feel that that's missing a very important component, because their client, like any other client, is the child. But I think if I don't meet the parents, I cannot get a full understanding of what is really going on, okay? And then I meet the children. And it's just astounding, the information that I get from parents compared to what the children tell me. So just again, a little more information about what the role of the attorney is, at least in New York, which is where I'm from, or where I practice. The statute allows me to substitute my judgment for a child's if I think that their thinking is impaired in some way. So, and there has to be also imminent harm that will come to them if I don't substitute my judgment. So it's really, it's a judgment call. It's really important for me to hear what these children are saying, get the full picture, and then if I think that their judgment is impaired, I will substitute my judgment. At all times, I have to say anyway what the children feel or want. So, for example, I was just fired by one of my clients who is, let's say he's in 8th grade. And I was shocked, but why? Because, in my opinion, one of the parents is overly influencing the child and his thinking. I'll ask, go ahead, question.
Well, when you said imminent danger, and you went on a little bit, what came into my mind was if the child is being unduly influenced, but it's not necessarily imminent danger. I'm not sure how I wanted to make that into a question, but unduly influenced, but not imminent danger.
Okay, so there's actually been case law about something which I was going to get to later on, but that's okay, which is something called alienation or resist refuse, where a child does not go to a parent, one of the parents, because of the over-influence. So the rule of thumb generally with those types of cases is they're hybrids. There's usually some element that the other parent is bringing to the table that is helping to estrange the child from him or her. But there is case law that says that the alienation is considered imminent danger in the sense of emotional, clearly not physical, but if they're going to no longer be able to have a relationship with a parent, that is emotionally, obviously, hugely damaging. So, but I'll also tell you a little secret. In the back room with the judges, what they do is they always ask me anyway, what do you think? Okay, because I'm doing it long enough and I think that I have enough credibility that an insight already, that if I say this is what I think is going on, they generally listen. It doesn't mean they make the decisions. I don't make any decisions. I just bring to the table the information I have, which is critical information. So for example, on this one particular case I was just recently assigned, it's a 14-year-old, and I was told by her that my dad is constantly disparaging my mom, constantly talking about, all kinds of terrible things about her. The mom, what is she doing? The mom is telling the child everything about the divorce. So, cluster, okay? Like, how many ways can we try to destroy the child that we claim to love? And I know that they're not intentionally doing it. I know they're not. But this is what I'm hearing, and the child doesn't really even realize that the kind of information flow to her is as damaging as it is. And I can see ahead as to how this is going to impact her. So what do? My favorite part of the job. I get to yell at the parents. I pick up the phone and I call them, sometimes with the attorney, sometimes without. Depends. The attorneys have to give me the right to speak to them without them. But in any event, regardless, I'll say it whether an attorney's on the phone or not. And I don't yell, kind of yell. Tell them, look, this is what you're doing, and it needs to stop. And if it doesn't stop, I'm definitely going to do something about it with the judge. I'm going to. So, the first time I kind of protect the parents in a way by, for example, going into the judge recently on that case, and the attorneys were there, and I said, look, I'm not going to get into the specifics of this case, but I'm just telling you, both parents are acting badly. and both parents are affecting my child, my client, and I need it to stop. And if it doesn't stop, we're going to do something about it. Like I'll bring a motion to, I don't know yet. We'll see how it pans out. It just happened this week. But in addition, I always say that they have to go to a parenting course. They think, and then what they usually do, my favorite part is they sit there in the meeting, in the classes, and they go, oh, that's for the other side, So, but it's okay. At least they're getting the information, and maybe they'll think twice the next time that they try to influence the child. So, my goal is to help these kids understand. I always give them the tools, TMI, when their parents tell them too much information, and that if it really gets bad, you say, and I always give them my card, which is the most adorable thing, for all ages. They're like, I have a lawyer, and they feel so powerful. But look, I'm there to advise them like any other client. So that includes like not taking advantage of the power that they've given in me. Like, there's only so much. No, I cannot get you ice cream every day. There's a limit. But it's, at least they know, I said, here's my cell phone number, here's my card, you call me day or night, I don't care what's going on. If you're stressed out, you call me, okay? Because then I'll handle it. So that is part and parcel of my job, representing children. Go ahead.
Don't forget to tell the story about the 13-year-old that fired you.
Oh, well, okay, sorry, thank you. I'll back up to that. The 13-year-old, very unique particular set of facts in that case, and it had to do with him wanting to change schools. Parents were on two very different, points of view as to the type of school this child should go to. And the child wanted to go to this school, not the other school that the other parent wanted. And there wasn't enough time for the judge to make a decision, because when a judge makes a decision about a major decision affecting health, education, religion, general welfare of a child, they don't particularly always say, okay, the child's going to go to that school. What they do is they say, we're going to give that decision-making authority to that parent, because the judge decides that parent's thinking and judgment is better than the other parent. That's all they do. They don't say, like I said, you go to this school or that school. So there wasn't enough time by the time the application for the school change was brought for the judge to make a decision. So now what? So I had a couple of connections, and I tried, and I did, and was successful in getting the child into a middle school, right? Like the school, not middle age-wise, but middle of the road school. And the judge was, just so excited about it. Parents agreed. And I tried to get my client to be excited about it, because it's not what he wanted, but it was an excellent school, excellent choice. Anyway, fast forward, the other piece of it is that he wanted to not see his mother as much. And I didn't push him, but again, I'm there to advise as well. Just like this morning on the train coming here, I advised my client, you need to tell the father you're going to visit this school now, not after the fact, now, So they don't, clients don't always want to hear what you have to say, but that's my job. I'm there to advise them and keep them out of trouble. So in this particular case, I did say, talk about a relationship with your mother, and I'm going to say that there's nothing that would really prevent or should be preventing that relationship. Okay, so those conversations took place, but he did really what he wanted to do. I wasn't pushing him like crazy. Anyway, he calls up and he says, I don't want you to be my lawyer anymore. I feel like you're more into compromising than doing what I want, advocating for me. So I then have to tell the judge, I have been fired by my 8th grader, which I think is like hilarious, because thank God in in my career, I have not been fired by clients. It's my own personal record, which makes me very happy. So, but I told the judge, and the judge said, and that I'm not going to let you go because I think that that's empowering this child too much. And if you're okay with staying on, you know, we'll try to figure this out. I said, of course I'm willing to do whatever the court wants, staying in. So what's happening? I'm going to be bringing the child to the court with the judge. And so we will have a conversation. And I told the judge, you're going to need to tell this child, I'm not the bad guy here. You get to make those decisions. You made a decision about school. I offered a compromise. That's all. You know, I said that to the child, you will have a choice. You can either go to this compromised school that your parents have agreed to, or you can go back to the school you never wanted to go to again. That's the choices the judge gave me, and I'm giving you. Anyway, he thought the problem is, some of the kids think that I have a lot more power, and I try to tell them I don't. There's a limit to what I can do for you, you know? So we'll see what happens. We're meeting next week in the courthouse. But speaking of meeting with the judges, so part of the job is to bring the child to the courthouse if I can't settle it or the parents can't settle it, and meet with the judge. That usually happens after a trial, and it's called a Lincoln hearing or in-camera interview. The only people that are there is a court stenographer, me, the judge, and the kids, of course. And some of them have been very enlightening, really enlightening. I mean, the judges get trained, you know, most of them get trained to be able to speak to kids and what you ask them, how you get this information out. But if they don't, I know how to do it. And because also I built a relationship with them, they're first meeting the judge like one time, you know, not every kid is going to open up to a new person. So I pull out the information. Go ahead.
Do you have any, child psychology background at all?
I don't, but I have taken an enormous number of classes through what's called the AFCC, which is Association of Family and Conciliation Courts, and it's a national organization that is interdisciplinary. It has mental health judges and lawyers, and conferences throughout the year, and classes online, and you know, I try to be as up to date as possible on the latest research. You know, overnights for 0 to 48 month olds is a huge issue in our field. And beyond that. And so I, again, try to read, try to learn as much as I can. And if I knew that this was going to be my path, I probably would have at least minored in psychology. I wanted to solve the Middle East crisis, actually, when I was in college. So I somehow I figured I can't even speak English, so let alone another language. And I knew that was not a path that but this is sort of the same. Like husband, wife, Arab, Israelis, it's pretty bad. So that is, and also as an attorney for the child, you have to go through their training in addition. So that's another area.
So that explains why you'd be able to bring in more information from the child, because you are still taking these workshops and courses.
Yes.
While it's not a formal thing, you still really do have that.
Absolutely. Listen, it's also my experience as an attorney for the child is that a lot of it has to do with actually doing the work, okay? I don't stop. I call the schools, I call the school psychologists, I look at the records, I call the therapists, I call the pediatrician, the after school, the camps, whoever. I call collateral people, people that the parents say are really important that I hear from. I try to get all the information. Some don't. They just kind of hear their child and then they present the facts, but I don't know that that's giving the best picture. So I think part of the work is just doing the work. Just to kind of finish up with the Lincoln hearing is I bring the children to the courthouse. There's some very funny ones that have taken place. Obviously, it's a very serious moment, but with one judge, there were 2 kids, and the judge asked first thing, so did either of your parents tell you to tell me anything? And the boy, who was probably about 8, I think he was 8 or 9, oh yes, my daddy told me that I want 50-50 and you should give it to me. With him, you know, I want 50, my dad wants 50-50 and you should give it to him. So, you know, we kind of we chuckled because kids don't really know what they're saying. They don't realize what they have just done is told us, right? That the father is influencing the child to then influence the judge. Anyway, moving on. I think that, and the one thing that I do tell all my I call them my little clients, is just be honest. Just tell the truth. No matter how scary it is, you don't get to make the decision here, the judge does. Because, you know, of course they feel pressure. Like if I never ask a child, who do you want to live with? You know, it's like big no-no. You don't do that. How's the schedule going? Would you like to tinker with it at all? You know, that's like a very different way of asking that question. You know, what do you do with your dad when you're with him? What do you do with your mom when you're with her? Et cetera, et cetera. So it's kind of different. Okay, so I'm going to move on. I made up, oh, look, I'm so bad at this. 1 minute. Let me just see. Okay. Hold on. I was going to get into how many of you are divorced, how many of you have children, how many of you are children of divorce, how many of you are married, serious relationship, etc. But we can move on from that. I thought that this was kind of part of the MENSA thinking. You know, this is not. It is so emotional, so opposite of MENSA, right? But we need to bring MENSA into this process in a way, because you have to be more rational. People have to be more rational when they're making decisions. I had one fight. We were this close to settling, and the fight was over a tablecloth, an embroidered tablecloth. And we must have, the lawyers, you know, the other lawyer on the other side, we must have been fighting for an hour over this tablecloth until I finally just kind of stopped myself. You know, you get so involved in your client's own mishigas, okay, and nuttiness sometimes, that you forget to look at the forest. You know, you have to pick the trees out. And so I said, I'm going to go to Tiffany's now. I'm going to buy the most expensive tablecloth, and it's on me. And I'm going to rip up this tablecloth because we're settling this case. This is not about the tablecloth, right? It's not about the tablecloth. That's what you have to remember. It's letting go. It's moving on. It's realizing it's the end of an era, you know, et cetera. It's facing all of the loss, whether you're the leavor or the leavee. It doesn't matter. It's still a loss. And that's kind of what, you know, what can happen. So these are, in this new book that we are writing, my partner and I, calling Cracking the Custody Code, we're trying to give to the litigants. It's not for lawyers, it's not for therapists, it's for the litigants. And I came up with a little acronym, which is kind of silly, but it's the only way I remember things, if I make silly acronyms. So mnemonics. Okay, so the first one we just went through is the child's point of view. The second one is resist, refuse dynamic and reunification treatment. Okay, so this was what you had, you know, raised before. This is a real huge problem now in divorces. Major problem where one parent is disparaging the other parent to the child. And it's well known that disparaging a parent to the child is as if you're disparaging the child, because they see themselves as a reflection of the parent, that parent. I don't understand you, sorry.
They're half of each parent.
Yeah, they're half of each parent.
Disparaging the other parent, you're disparaging that half of that child.
Exactly. And it takes all forms. Some people are just absolutely blatantly directly saying, like I just said before, that the father's just completely negatively, saying all these negative things about the mom. And then there's others that are just sort of not doing anything. They don't push the child to be kind to the other parent, to be a parent. If you were married and you heard your child speaking disrespectfully to the other parent, you're supposed to back the other parent and say, that is unacceptable behavior. But instead, they're letting it just happen. And so by omission, it's still happening. It's just a different form of the same, well, it's really called alienating behaviors, okay? And I have a client now, it just breaks my heart. 4 years, he has not seen one of his daughters. Thank God, I was the second attorney that came in, and to some degree, this really is a specialty within the matrimonial world. And, I know what has to be done. It has to be immediate. The responses have to be immediate. As soon as a child is not seeing a parent, you have to get that judge, no matter what you do. Stamp your feet, be in their face, write letters, emails, motions, just be in their face and get the job done where it's ordered. It's court ordered that the child has to be brought. Because the longer it goes on, the worse it is, and the harder it is for that child to come back. They have a mantra in their head that's reinforced by the other parent, that the other parent is a bad parent in whatever way, whether it's abusive or verbally abusive, physically abusive, etc. And yes, there are absolutely occasions when it is critical a child is actually not in the other parent's care. 100%. There are definitely cases that it's bad. And that's when it's warranted. But when you get the information and you see it's not warranted, this is like, okay, time to act, like right away. And unfortunately, the judicial system is not the best at handling this because they have such huge caseloads that to act immediately on almost anything is very difficult. They're just overloaded. We don't, at least in Manhattan, in my opinion, we don't have enough matrimonial judges. We have the largest number of divorces, outside of California and some of the larger states, of course, but we need more. We just need more. And we need them to be trained and aware of what's going on. So the way that this particular feature of custody is dealt with is called reunification therapy. So there are therapists that are trained for reunification treatment. And there are all kinds of classes through AFCC that, gives this kind of training. It's a real specialty. There are not that many that do it, unfortunately. There is one particular psychologist, Marsha Klein Pruitt, who started a program called Overcoming Barriers. And it's meeting with the whole family has to come. That she gets to vet them. Are both parents willing to do this? Some courts have ordered it, and they make it a component of the visitation or the parenting. We don't really call it visitation anymore. It's now called parental access. So it is part and parcel of seeing your child or continuing the access that is going on. It's a weekend, it's a week, it's a fortune. Most people can't afford it. That's just what it is. It's way too expensive for the run-of-the-mill, person. And this goes on so often that it's almost at pandemic levels because I see it all the time. So the client that hasn't seen one of the two children for 4 years, thank God I came into the case early enough. I was hired to get the second child, at least. He has about 40% time with the second child. And it's a struggle. It's a struggle for this child because she goes back to a home where one of the kids is not, her sister is not seeing, her father. And that influences that child. She's at high risk of this happening to her. But it's just keep, no matter what, he calls me, upset, frustrated. I say, no matter what, you keep seeing your child. I don't want to hear it. Like, that's it. You just keep going. So, and he does, and he has really built up a beautiful relationship with her. And just, we're at a point right now that I think most of the psychologists are saying it's probably not going to happen that that second child's relationship is going to turn around now. Now, fast forward again, I've been doing this long enough to see the other side, what happens when they, let's say, go off to college or are getting married. Many of them come back. But as he said to me, how do I make up age 9, 10, 11, 12? That's when it started, young, age 9. Used to be more so teenagers because they were more vulnerable and susceptible to this kind of alienating behavior, but now it's starting really young. And it's so sad. He said, how do I get those years back? What's the credit to me? Everybody's all concerned about the money and the support. What's the credit to me for 4 years? And now it's going to be 5 and 6 and 7. And I think he had a come to Jesus moment where he had to say to himself, I have to let this go. I just have to let this go for now. I want to tell my child, I love you, I'm there for you, I'm going to show up at all your games, all your after schools, I'm going to be there. Kind of whether you like it or not, I'm coming, because I want you to know I love you. And that's the advice that he's been given by people in this field. And he's doing it, but it's still like, and I do blame the system. I partially blame the system. I clearly blame the wife. But I partially blame the system. And that's something that I personally have a goal to try to help fix this particular aspect of the law. So that is that on the resist refuse, and now we're going to substance abuse issues. Okay, another specialty of mine. How do you put safeguards in place for a parent? Safeguards in place to protect children from a parent who is an alcoholic, a drug addict, sex addict. There's all kinds of addicts out there. So first let me just say that I've noticed since, particularly New York, since pot became legal, the change in the judges when somebody mentions my spouse is constantly smoking pot, it's like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? But I'm looking into the research that they can tell the levels of usage if you do the hair follicle testing, et cetera, which I'll talk about in a minute. So, but it's just an interesting change because it just happened. It used to be before, if you say someone's smoking pot when they're with the child or children, immediately you're sent down, the judge sends you down to get drug tested immediately. So, okay, that's a little less so now, but alcohol, cocaine, all these others, if there's any drug particular, they insist the judge insists that you go get drug tested that day. So in between, what have I heard people doing? They cut their hair, they shave their heads, everywhere, because they'll take hair from wherever. So I always love hearing that one. Oh, they shaved. Well, that's an indication, obviously, to the judge. They walked into court with a full head of hair, right? Anyway, so what are the protocols? Let me talk about alcohol for a minute, because I have a case now that the mother has been struggling with alcohol and becoming sober and maintaining her sobriety. She's been in and out of rehabs. She's fighting for custody against another relative, and the child is 5 years old. So what do we do? So the first thing I asked her, are you getting SoberLink tested? So again, I'm the second attorney, and because the first attorney didn't really know how to handle this, she's now first, after a year and a half of not really having time with her child, getting SoberLink tested. If somebody is SoberLink tested and we put it in place for a period of time, let me back up. What is SoberLink? It's a device that you actually breathe into. It's a small, little square device. You breathe into it, takes a picture of you. So they say there's not really another way around it because it's got a picture of you as you're blowing into this device. And it's recorded and sent to whoever is on the list. So I get SoberLink results from this particular client. The other side does. Everybody's aware of whether or not a test has been, is positive or negative, right? A missed test can be equal to a positive result. It depends. If they take the test within a 15-minute range of time, usually, that's not considered negative as long as it's negative. As long as it's negative, the results. So it's a blood alcohol level of 0.08 and above, I think, is a problem. But we make it when we have young kids, we say 0.00, that's all. I don't want to hear about it. No way can you have an ounce of alcohol in your system if you're testing, on the device. You just can't. We don't play with kids. They're not petri dishes. We're not going to try it out and see how did we do with one drink or two drinks. So again, how do you manage relapses in agreements where if you want to try to reach a settlement, I can put in place, I have plenty of agreements where I put in place a system of testing for X amount of time. I also work with a psychiatrist who's trained in this field, and I send everybody to her. She has such a great record of getting my clients sober and keeping them sober that it's like she's my go-to person. Also expensive, but to me, if you're going to put your money anywhere, put it there, because then you get your children. Whether it's full-time, part-time, it doesn't matter. The point is you be with your children. So this is in an agreement. You can map out, how to provide for relapses. We have supervised visitation is something we put in place often. Judges don't like to keep supervised visitation in place long periods of time. That's a problem because it's a problem because these kids sometimes start out so young. If they're teenagers and they're able to get out of a car or run away, to the other parent or do something where they protect themselves, okay, I have less of a need for the supervision. But clearly up until like age 10, 11, I need my supervisor in place. It depends on which side I'm on, but for the most part, I'm arguing for supervision regardless because, again, it's very hard for me to put on my matrimonial attorney hat and then take it off and forget about the hat where I'm the attorney for the kids. I just can't. And I think that's one of the reasons that judges respect me when I walk into court, because they know that when I am talking for my client, but I'm also really talking about the kids. And I will agree to I'm the first one to say, SoberLink, my client, don't care. She says she has no problem, and I'm going to tell my client, this is what we're doing, because you want your kids, that's what you're going to do. And you may have to do it for a year. You may have to do it for 2 years, but that's the price, Again, I think it's setting realistic expectations of a parent that has an addiction and having the other side, kind of go with the fact that they married an addict. Most often, these people have married an addict. Most often. Not always. Sometimes it happens during the marriage. Any questions on substance abuse issues? Okay. So the next topic is evaluations, forensic custody evaluations. It's an expensive process. It can be anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 I've seen. Okay, it depends if you have a client that you think has pathology, whether it's your client or the other side, and there's a pathology, not just a little insanity, but a real pathology, you need to get a psychiatrist in there. And the judges kind of know that too. The run-of-the-mill divorce where they're fighting over one night, they're not going to appoint either an attorney for the child or a forensic evaluation. So just in a particular case I'm on right now. The insight to self is critical for these forensics. Insight to self. That is something that I read over and over and over again in these reports. The person has no insight to their own issues, none. Even if they walk in the door and I tell them, it doesn't matter. They're not gonna, it's something they don't feel in their heart and soul place. They're not gonna be able to express it to the other side. So I leave that process to the forensic examiner, but you can be a LCSW, you can have a psychology degree, you can be a psychiatrist. The only two people, and this only happened in the last year, psychologists can diagnose. Before that they couldn't, LCSWs can't, and psychiatrists can. So, okay. With forensics, the judges get to decide whether or not the forensic will make a recommendation on parenting and decision making. They don't always want that. Sometimes they want to just give me all the information. I'm the trier of fact. I'll lead myself to my own conclusions about what should happen at the end of the day. But I don't know. I always find it helpful to get the recommendations. Feel free to toss them out if you don't think they apply, but I just think that this is what they do for a living and they've been trained. But it's given substantial weight. One of the judges said her hope and goal of the forensic was that the litigants would read it, gain insight to themselves if they didn't have it before, and actually try to settle at that point, because now they've seen themselves in a mirror by someone who is a specialist. Doesn't always happen that way. It just doesn't. So I have one now where the mother did not choose to join the forensic process, even though it was court ordered. So what information do you think that was telling the judge? It said so much about this particular mother, and I think as a result, it's really going to damage her ability to see her child. It's going to end up we're in the middle of a trial right now on that topic. All right, I'm going to move. Any questions about? Yes.
Sometimes maybe she didn't want to see it because if the other legal parties pay the psychiatrist, they have a lot of leeway in the sway of the psychiatrist.
So, okay, it's court ordered about the pro rata share of payment.
But maybe they petition it first before it's court ordered.
Wait, say that one again?
I'm sorry?
I didn't hear you.
Maybe they petitioned for it first before it was court ordered.
Oh.
And then the judge pretty much grants it, and the paying party has a lot of sway over the psychiatrist. At least it's happened to some people I know.
Okay, so my experience of the best in the business is that's not true. Because I've seen it go totally against the payor of the forensic, totally against, because it's their own ethics, right? I mean, I can't, maybe there's one or two or three out there that they're hired guns, possibly, but that's not generally my experience, and it really isn't about payment. Listen, I get paid sometimes 100% by one side or the other. I could care less who pays my bill, just pay my bill. I don't care. I really don't care. I'm there for the children, right? That's all I care about when I'm in that role. It's just not my experience, to be influenced by who's paying, because they're going to be quickly found out, especially I can tell you in Manhattan, we'll be talking about it like right away, right? Right away. It's like we all kind of get together. We have an annual meeting coming up next week, actually, up in Lake Placid. And, we sit around and talk about the judges. We talk about the psychiatrists and the psychologists. We talk about all of them. We know the good ones. We know the bad ones. We're all pretty much on the same page. So I don't know that that's necessarily, I think it's an exception to the rule. How's that? Yeah. All right, let's move to celebrity divorces. Let's have some fun. So I have my own personal opinion about Brangelina and that dynamic. Look, it's come out in the New York Post. It's come out in different journals that, you know, he probably had a drinking issue. He acknowledges it, right? So let's go back to this, the the addiction arena. He got sober, and maybe there was an incident on a plane. Maybe. None of us were there. Maybe there was. But this woman chose to have all those children with this man, right? And have an affair as well to get him, okay? To boot. So this is just, again, my own gut instinct about it. I think she's somebody that has really made sure that this father is estranged from the kids. And they're in court all the time. This is a non-ending divorce. It's incredible to me. I mean, article after article. Now it's over the house in France. It's over the house in, it's just on and on and on. And I think she is unable to unhook from him. If I can't get positive, attention from this guy, I'm going to get negative attention. And, he's begged her in all kinds of papers you see. He's begged her, like, can we please just calm down? I take personal issue, actually, with, what's her name? The blonde actress. That just escaped me. She called it conscious uncoupling. Gwyneth Paltrow, thank you. Okay. I take issue with that. I did that first with my ex. I did that first, okay? Way before her. Because my kid was more important than anything else. I would have given him a lot to just make sure the schedule that was in place was appropriate for her. She was only 5. Okay? And thank God he went along with, he said, listen, you know what you're doing. I gotta believe you're not gonna do anything that's gonna hurt our daughter. And the proof is in the pudding. I have bit my tongue often, at times. Smile at those exchanges. They're critical that how, the parents exchange a child. The kids watch everything. They go into the phones. They go into the computers. They read everything. Multiple times I've had, a child tell me, I know my dad's having an affair. I know my mom's having an affair. How do you know? Oh, I went into the computer. I found pictures. I'm like, okay, we need to stop this. And I call the parents, change your passwords, So, because they think it's great, but what they don't know is they can't handle the information. And not every kid is in therapy. So, it's to talk about this stuff, right? So they should be consciously uncoupling. It's enough already. Now, let's go to the one with Kevin Costner, right? Kevin, people are like, how could you kick your wife out? How you let that happen? They had a prenup. Prenups are valid. If they're done correctly, they're valid. And she should have negotiated that I don't have to leave the home if there are children that we have together. I don't have to leave the marital home until, everything is settled. I have that in my agreements, most of them. I mean, that's just what you do. So I don't know exactly what was going on back then. Maybe she felt she had a gun to her head and wanted to get it signed because she was marrying gorgeous Kevin Costner. But look, I've also heard not such nice things about him through the divorce grapevine, and but that's it. There's a prenup. So I don't know what's going to happen with those kids. Now, I've had a number of celebrity divorces. They're really not all that different than anybody else's divorces. They're just in the media, which of course is horrible for the children. And I can tell you the one that we just finally finished the trial, got a decision, and the mother was in the news every day about this case, about a lot of things, but particularly also about the children, naming the school that they attended, etc. So I brought a motion, an application to the court, it's called an order to show cause, it's a gag order, to stop her from talking to the press. My clients told me all about it, what they saw in the news, what their friends are talking about, talk about the impact. The court has the right to do that in very rare occasions because of our First Amendment rights, but this judge, thank God, had the guts to do it, and there is case law that says if it's for the benefit of the children, you can, issue a gag order. So I got a gag order. She violated it like the next day, but at least I got it. And I was able to tell the children, I did what I could for you to stop your mom from going to the press. And very sad, very, very, very sad case, terrible case. And the father ended up getting custody, full custody, 100% custody. And we'll see where that ends up. But one of the topics I know that I'm supposed to be talking about is how to protect your children's inheritance. Okay, settle. Just settle. Settle your case. That's the answer. The enormous amount, I was paid, and I don't mean this like in an obnoxious way, but $1 million for a custody fight. $1 million. It's outrageous. I mean, yay, I put my kid through school, college, but that's just ridiculous. $1 million for custody. There's got to be a better way. That's the answer. If you want to protect your children's inheritance, settle as early as you can, and keep your counsel fees. Listen, I have all kinds of things. Start a 529B plan early on. Put $100 in every month. It doesn't matter how much. By the time you're done, we'll see unless the laws change, right? But this is present the best version of yourself, of course, to the forensic custody evaluator. Oh, I'm going to say one thing about that, actually. One of the things that I often hear, there's so many often hears, I often hear that how is this forensic ever going to know that whether it's husband or wife, is a narcissist, is lying, how are they going to know? It's like, well, that's what they're trained for. There's also all kinds of psych testing. There's different ways of eliciting the information. They also get information from other sources, that verify and corroborate, right, what the person in front of them is telling them. So it's just one of the bigger concerns, because somebody says, oh, they're so charming when they come in, they'll meet you, you would never know. It's like, trust me, they know. They know. They can they can see it right away, pretty soon after. I said this before, love your kids more than you hate your spouse. That's, to me, one of the most important sentences that I think people have to keep in mind. And, do what is best for the kids now. Keep them out of the war. I can't even tell you, because, look, part of my own feeling about this is I would want somebody to be saying these things to me when I was going through my divorce if I felt that way. Thank God I didn't, and I didn't have to be told these things, because I see it all the time, and I would never do that to my kid. But, this is what I keep thinking is do what is right for them. Keep them out of the war. I told the celebrity case, I told the kids, you have two things to do. You have to do well in school. You have to focus on your homework, and have fun with your friends. That's it. That's all I want to hear about. Turn the TV off, stop looking at the computer, tell your friends not to tell you anymore about your mom being in the news, about you and about this case, etc. And that's it. Just try to turn it off. Easier said than done. I'm not naive, but that's critical to me. And you know what? If you think, people come into my office often and say, oh, I can change my schedule now. I can be there at 6 o'clock. I can get home at 6. Tell the judge, Okay, well, why weren't you doing it all along, right? If you could do it, then do it. Just do it now, right? I mean, I think that's, because it's the judges do look back at the history for the future, what to do going forward. On the other hand, there is a trend for joint custody. There's no question there is a trend for 50-50. You have to most of the judges now, you have to prove why it shouldn't be 50-50. And I'm not saying there's anything, I'm not making a judgment call on that. I'm just saying that's the status of where we're at right now. California's been like that for a long time. New York is probably one of the more backward states. We were the last ones to get rid of grounds for divorce. We still had to go into court and prove adultery, abandonment, no sex for a year. I mean, what other job? Somebody comes, you know, do you know of that? Somebody can walk into your office and say, when was the last time you had sex? You know, it's like, it's crazy. But we don't do that anymore. And I think that's it. That's the end of my slideshow.